They keep telling you to meditate, to journal, to be more grateful. But how are you supposed to do all that when your rent is late, your messages go unanswered, and your chest feels like it's folding in on itself every night? Truth is, this system was never designed for you to thrive. It was built to keep you isolated, overworked, and emotionally numb. And yet, they still blame you for not being more positive. You don't need another productivity hack. You need to feel seen, heard, held. Because right now, we're living in a time where group chats have replaced real gatherings, and dating apps feel more like slot machines for disappointment. People are lonelier than ever, but everyone's pretending they're fine. This isn't just a personal problem, it's a structural one. And it's time we stop blaming ourselves for struggling to belong in a world that profits from our disconnection. In this video, I'm going to show you why your loneliness isn't your fault, and how small, subversive acts of connection can rebuild the life you've been told to stop hoping for. We'll talk about why real community has disappeared, why modern dating is so emotionally exhausting, and how micro-communities might be the most radical form of healing available to you right now. If you've ever asked yourself, why does everything feel so fake? This is your answer. And maybe, just maybe, it's the beginning of something real. There was a time when belonging didn't need a price tag. You helped your neighbor fix their porch not for money, but because one day you'd need a hand too. The corner store clerk knew your name. The mechanic waved at you in the morning, and the old woman down the block always had extra soup for whoever walked by. Now, community has been replaced by convenience. We smile at screens and forget the names of the people we live beside. Real connection has been traded for digital efficiency. And in this loneliness epidemic, no one dares to admit they're starving for touch. If you've ever felt surrounded yet completely alone, you already understand the problem. We live stacked in buildings, scrolling side by side, yet we haven't spoken to our neighbors in months. We've outsourced friendship to group chats and replaced shared dinners with shared memes. What we're missing isn't just proximity, it's participation. Community is not a location, it's a verb. It's carrying bags, watching kids, sharing meals, and holding space when someone's falling apart. But when survival takes all your energy, connection starts to feel like a luxury. And that's how isolation becomes the norm. In poor neighborhoods, ironically, you still find fragments of real community. People who trade favors instead of cash. Grandmothers who cook for entire apartment blocks. Strangers who will walk your kid to school if you're late for a shift. It's not idealism. It's survival strategy. These micro-networks keep people afloat. They are the invisible scaffolding poor folks use to hold the world together when institutions fail. And maybe that's what we need to rebuild. Not just safety nets from governments, but bridges between each other. Real ones. Ones you can walk across barefoot. So how do we get that back? Start embarrassingly small. Knock on your neighbor's door and introduce yourself. Leave a note with your number. Offer a cup of tea. Host a potluck where nobody has to clean their house perfectly first. Community is built in tiny, imperfect, repeated gestures. Forget the Instagram aesthetic. Real life is messy. But when people feel seen in that mess, that's when they show up. And trust me, someone in your building is praying for a friend too. You could be the miracle they didn't know they were waiting for. One thing I've learned, you can't wait for the perfect setup. You build connection like you plant potatoes, in the dirt, with your hands. Some will rot, some will thrive, but it's always worth planting, and you don't need permission to begin. You can start by cooking 2 extra servings of dinner. Walk into the laundry room and say hello. If there's a local bulletin board, post something weird and wonderful. Tuesday night soup and stories, BYO spoon. The best communities are never perfect. They're just consistent. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do in a disconnected world is to care loudly. Say good morning and mean it. Share your umbrella even if it makes you a little wet. Stop pretending you don't notice when someone is hurting. Call them. Ask how they are and wait for the second answer. The real one. These moments don't go viral. They go inward. They grow roots. And when the storms hit, as they always do, You'll be shocked by how strong a shelter those roots can become. And look, this isn't about fixing the whole world. That's too much for anyone. But it is about refusing to pretend we're meant to do life alone. It's about rejecting the algorithm that feeds you isolation and calling a human instead. It's about saying, I see you, in a society that thrives on keeping us invisible to each other. When we stop trying to impress and start trying to belong, everything changes. Loneliness doesn't stand a chance against a shared bowl of soup. So if all of this feels a little out of reach right now, good. That means you're human. That means you haven't given up. And it means you're still hungry for something real. That hunger is sacred. Don't ignore it. Don't numb it. Follow it. Because maybe, just maybe, the thing you're craving is the very thing you were born to rebuild. Dating today feels less like seeking love and more like navigating a never-ending job interview, where the rules keep changing and nobody wants to admit they're scared. We swipe through profiles with expressions more rehearsed than real. We ghost, bench, orbit, anything to avoid the terror of being truly known. This isn't because we're heartless, it's because we're exhausted. Because somewhere along the way, vulnerability got rebranded as weakness. And now, showing affection feels like confessing a crime. You try to care without caring too much. But what happens when everyone is playing the same game of emotional hide-and-seek? It's wild, isn't it? You can sleep next to someone and still feel lonelier than when you were alone. Because intimacy isn't about proximity, it's about presence. It's about someone choosing to see you, every unfiltered inch of you, and staying. But how can we build that when we're all too afraid to go first? So we stay on apps, trading banter, and disappearing mid-conversation. We call it casual, but what we really mean is safe. Because being casual means you never have to admit you hoped for something more. It's a defense mechanism wrapped in a dating strategy. I'm not saying we should abandon caution. Of course not. Trust is earned. But what if we redefined the risk? What if the real danger isn't opening up, but shutting down for so long we forget how to open at all? There's strength in softness. There's courage in saying, I like you, and that scares me. That kind of honesty, it changes people. It disarms them. And yeah, some will run. But others, those worth your time, will stay. Because they were waiting for someone to go first too. Let me offer you something practical. Try slow dating. No, not the kind where you wait 3 days to text back. I mean real, intentional slowness. Go on a walk instead of a dinner. Leave your phone off. Ask weird questions. Share stories you usually keep for your journal. Tell someone what you actually think instead of what you think they want to hear. That's how you find the ones who aren't just performing intimacy. They're hungry for it like you are. And when you do get hurt, and you will, because that's part of it, don't let it turn you to stone. Let it teach you. Let it deepen you. Love isn't a guarantee, but neither is numbness. One hurts now, the other hurts forever. We have to stop pretending we can out-strategize heartbreak. What we can do is choose relationships that reflect our values, not just our insecurities. People who are emotionally available, who ask how your day really was, who say sorry without ego. That's not a fantasy, that's alignment. There's a reason dating feels so transactional now. Because we've all internalized the capitalist mindset that everything, even connection, must have a return on investment. But people aren't products, and love isn't scalable. You can't hack your way into someone's heart. What you can do is be radically human in a world that teaches you to be a brand. And maybe that's the most attractive quality of all. Someone who's just real. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be endlessly interesting or unreadably mysterious. You just have to be present. That's rarer than beauty now. When you show up with honesty, something shifts. Even if it doesn't lead to romance, it leaves an imprint, and those imprints add up. They build a map back to yourself. Because maybe dating isn't really about finding someone else. It's about remembering who you are when you stop pretending. So if you're tired of the performative dance, the endless games, the ghost towns of conversations that once felt like possibility, good. That tiredness is telling you something. It's a hunger for depth, not distraction. And the moment you start dating from that place, something surprising happens. People start showing up differently. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And that changes everything. You don't need a massive circle. You need the right one. In a world where everyone's shouting to be heard, sometimes the real revolution is whispering with a few people who actually listen. That's the magic of micro-communities. They're not glamorous. They're not trending. But they're real. And they're powerful. It could be two friends who check in every Sunday, a group chat where you're allowed to be vulnerable, a weekly potluck with no agenda but showing up. These small tribes aren't accessories to your life. They become the backbone of your survival. And in a society that profits from your disconnection, building these spaces is an act of rebellion. We've been sold the lie that independence means isolation, that asking for help is weakness, that your problems should be hidden until they're fixed. But here's the truth. Healing happens in community. You weren't meant to carry everything alone. You weren't designed to be self-sufficient to the point of despair. Real strength isn't doing everything solo. It is knowing who to call when you worry falling apart. And the irony, once you open that door, people usually walk right in. Because they're desperate too. They just didn't know you were safe to be desperate with. The beauty of micro-communities is that they're scalable to your capacity. You don't have to be the host, the planner, or the emotional glue. Sometimes you just have to be there. Bring soup. Offer a ride. Text first. These small gestures create a web of connection that catches you when life frays at the edges. And you'd be amazed how quickly that web grows. A neighbor becomes a friend invites another. And suddenly you're surrounded by people who don't just know your name. They know your struggle, your laugh, your silence. Here's a practical idea. Start something tiny and consistent. A Sunday soup circle. A no-pressure walk every Thursday night. A book club that doesn't care if you finish the book. The goal isn't productivity, it's presence. You'll be shocked how healing it is to sit with others and not perform. To be seen without having to shine. And if nobody shows up at first, keep going. Consistency builds trust. People need to see you mean it before they believe they can join. In these spaces, vulnerability stops being a liability and becomes a bridge. You talk about your fears, your doubts, your confusion, and instead of judgment, you get nods. Laughter, stories that mirror your own. That resonance is what heals. Not advice, not solutions. Just knowing you're not the only one. Because the biggest lie loneliness tells you is that you're alone in feeling alone. And micro-communities are the antidote to that poison. They remind you that your pain has company, and therefore, your healing does too. You might think you're not the community type. Maybe you're introverted. Maybe you've been burned before. That's okay. Start with what feels safe. One person, one honest conversation, one shared walk. You don't need to build a movement. You just need to be human, out loud. The right people will find you. Or better yet, you'll find each other when you both stop pretending you don't need to be found. And this isn't just about support. It's about strategy. In times of crisis, micro-communities become survival infrastructure. They swap childcare, share food, lend tools, trade time. They bypass systems that weren't built for us and build networks that are. This is how people have survived for generations when institutions failed them. Not by waiting, but by weaving. And every time you choose to connect instead of isolate, you add another thread to that tapestry. So if you're feeling frayed, raw, or like your edges are unraveling, good. That's the perfect time to build something real. Let your need become your offering. Let your emptiness become the doorway. Because the tribe you build doesn't just support you, it reveals you. And the more real you are, the more likely the right people will gather around that fire you didn't even know you were lighting. So now you know, your loneliness was never just about you. It was about a world that told you to be self-sufficient while quietly removing every form of support. It was about a culture that rewarded isolation and called it strength. But here's the real power. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand that connection is a form of resistance, you start building differently. What's stopping you from texting someone right now? Someone you miss, someone you admire, someone who feels a little too far away? What's stopping you from starting that tiny gathering, even if it's just two people sharing leftovers and silence? You don't need to fix everything. You just need to show up differently, to care a little louder, to reach a little farther, and to remember that you were never meant to do this alone. You've been taught to cope. What if instead you started to connect? You've been told to hustle. What if you chose to heal? These aren't soft choices. They're survival strategies. They're how we begin to rebuild trust, not just in others, but in ourselves. And maybe the smallest risk you take today, sending a message, knocking on a door, saying "me too," could be the beginning of something sacred. So tell me, what kind of community do you crave? What would it feel like to belong again? Not just online, but in real life, with real people who see you even when you're quiet? Let me know in the comments. And if this video opened something in you, if it made you feel less alone, then share it. Someone else is waiting to feel that too. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and keep learning how to build a life that actually feels like yours. Because the next time you ask, "Is it just me?" I want you to remember, it's never just you.